Anas Altikrity. He's in London and is the CEO and founder of the research and advisory group, the Cordoba Foundation. Anas Altikrity, thank you very much for joining us. So, as Hajir was saying there, we're not quite certain on results, but it does seem as if Muqtada al Sadr and his party has done well. Just explain to us the significance of what would happen if Muqtada al Sadr was such a powerful figure in Iraq in the future.
Well, it'll be quite telling. I think that this particular outcome was expected. I think that there were several things that were anticipated, especially the low turnout that your correspondent alluded to. We're waiting for figures in the next 3 to 4 hours, but I think that initial figures show anything between 20 to a maximum of 30% turnout, which is extremely low. And I believe that the expectation that Sa'irun, which is the bloc of Muqtada al Sadr, was going to be the biggest winner, and I think that that has also come true. Probably the most interesting part of the results of these elections is the fact that many big names will have lost their seats, and we're going to see the emergence of probably a new crop of Iraqi politicians, which will be interesting. I would say. I wouldn't say it alludes to anything promising, but it's to say the very least it's interesting. The fact that Muqtada al Sadr will be the kingmaker, if you wish, it's highly anticipated that the next prime minister will be from that bloc. The majority of seats, probably up to 70, 77, maybe even more, will also be from the Sadr bloc. To be honest, I don't think that that bodes well for the kind of Iraq that the majority of Iraqis want. The Sadrist constituents are known to be extremely obedient, let's just say, to Muqtada al Sadr. They do as they are told. It's not the kind of political constituency that will create the kind of Iraq that people want, the kind of open, transparent, free from corruption, free from fear, free from violence, secure, stable Iraq. It doesn't bode well for that kind of hope and dream. But like I said, there are some elements which one could consider as being interesting.
It is a good use of the word obedient, I think, because it's interesting that al-Sadr doesn't seem to put himself forward, but is quite willing to pull the levers of power from in the background. And you mentioned the low turnout there. I mean, 20% would be very low. I think the Electoral Council is saying 40%. So I wonder what kind of legitimacy can anyone elected or any blocs elected have at that point with such a low voter turnout?
Well, in terms of legitimacy, I mean, we find such low turnouts from 20, 30, 35% all across the world. Here in the UK, we have had several governments which were voted into power with something like 33% of voter turnout and the such. So in terms of legitimacy, I think you can't really argue against the legitimacy of the election outcomes, even with such a low turnout. Remember, that even those who don't turn out are casting a vote one way or another. So in terms of legitimacy, I don't think that there's a question there. But the question that you pose, which is quite valid and quite interesting, is, what kind of political weight will those who have been voted into parliament, will they have, especially in terms of trying to gain the trust and confidence of the Iraqi people? I think that is where the problem lies. And I heard your correspondent, Hadi Al-Alawi, who made a very good summation of the outcome and expectation of the next few days and weeks after these elections. But the thing is that we have to remember that we're coming up to 19 years since the fall of the Saddam Hussein regime, since the beginning of the so-called liberation of Iraq and democratization of Iraq. And we've had almost a generation in terms of time in order to build the new Iraq, in order to build that kind of confidence between the political system and the people. And to be perfectly honest, Iraq still lingers at the very bottom of countries that have, any kind of freedom, any kind of democracy, any kind of transparency. So there's a really long way to go in terms of gaining that kind of confidence. Most Iraqis will tell you, and I'm talking about every single section of Iraqi people, will tell you that they have almost zero trust in the political system. They do not trust politicians to be non-corrupt, to be transparent, to be accountable to the Iraqi people. They don't trust the political system, which is swayed by armed militias. I mean, this
just
is
on that then, Mr. Altikrity, sorry to interrupt you, we are short of time though, but just on that, some commentators have in recent days said that the only way to bring about change in Iraq would be through some kind of revolution. Where do you stand on that particular premise?
Well, I'm not entirely sure that a revolution in the customary manner is what is called for, but a radical change. The political system isn't working. And I personally have contended for many a year that the political structure as built by the Americans in 2003 onwards is faulty. It doesn't work. Even if you bring the best of politicians, it simply won't work. We need a change. We need a radical change. Iraqis demand a radical change. With this, I'm not entirely sure that such a change is within our midst. I think that we're still in for a few good years of hardship, of difficulty, probably even more corruption, more violence, and unfortunately failure in terms of the expectation of the Iraqi people.
Oh, sorry to end on such a pessimistic note, but I do appreciate the analysis. Enes Altikrity, thank you for your time.